All right, let's dive right in. Welcome to this explainer on how a nation actually goes about legally safeguarding its biological wealth. We're talking about the traditional local knowledge tied to it too. I mean, whether we're looking at the next breakthrough medicine or some global skincare ingredient, it literally all starts here. Today, we're unpacking India's biological diversity framework. It is this massive, incredibly detailed system designed to make sure that as science and commerce advance, nature and the communities protecting it aren't just left behind. It's a fascinating intersection of law, biology, and economics, and we're going to break down exactly how the whole shebang works.
So here's our roadmap for today. We'll look at the evolution of the framework, the three-tiered structure running it, the leadership and operations, the rules for commercial access, fair benefit sharing, and finally how access gets restricted.
Starting off with Part 1, the evolution of the framework.
We've got to start with the macro-level view, the ecosystem approach to how this entire legal framework has evolved. Because, laws like this, they aren't static. They have to adapt as the world changes. The whole progression starts with the Foundational Biological Diversity Act back in 2002. That was the bedrock. But then, we got the 2023 Amendment Act, which modernized the system, bringing in necessary updates to handle modern realities, like how we actually treat cultivated medicinal plants and research nowadays. And then, we arrive at the operational guidelines rolled out in the 2024 Biological Diversity Rules. These 2024 rules are what give the Act its day-to-day teeth, detailing literally everything from specific web portal forms to digital fee payments.
Moving on to Part 2, the three-tiered structure.
Think about it. Protecting an entire subcontinent's biodiversity is a massive balancing act. You have to distribute power to hit global conservation standards while meeting deeply local community needs. So the absolute key here is a three-tiered, decentralized institutional structure. At the very top, you've got the National Biodiversity Authority, or NBA, headquartered in Chennai. Then, operating at the regional level, you have the state biodiversity boards. But what really grounds this entire framework? The Biodiversity Management Committees, or BMCs. This setup ensures that conservation isn't just some top-down mandate shouted from a capital city. It deeply involves local panchayats and municipalities. They're the ones actually on the ground, documenting local flora and fauna in what are called People's Biodiversity Registers.
Now, you might be wondering, why the separation of powers? Well, it takes some pretty dense legal jargon and turns it into a very clear boundary. Section 3 of the Act dictates that foreign interests, non-resident Indians, or foreign-backed companies face strict national scrutiny. They literally have to get direct approval from the National Biodiversity Authority. On the flip side, under Section 7, domestic Indian entities are regulated a bit differently. They work directly with their respective state biodiversity boards, and they just need to give prior intimation before accessing biological resources for commercial use. It's basically a dual-track system, entirely based on who exactly is asking for access.
All right, Part 3, leadership and operations.
Let's look at how this builds into the daily anatomy of the National Biodiversity Authority, and specifically, who's actually at the helm. Under the new 2024 rules, 3 is essentially a magic number. It represents the strict 3-year term limit for both the chairperson and the non-official members of the authority. Now, the chairperson can be reappointed, sure, but they cannot hold office after they hit 65 years of age. This rule is absolutely crucial because it ensures that the leadership overseeing these major environmental decisions constantly evolves and brings in fresh perspectives.
And then we have 7. 7 is the mandatory quorum required to actually hold an official authority meeting. The authority has to meet at least once every 3 months. And for any official business to even happen, at least 7 members must be present. When it comes time to make decisions, every single member present, including the member secretary, holds 1 vote. But if there's ever a tie, the chairperson steps in with a casting or second vote to break it.
To manage all these critical meetings and the day-to-day functions, the framework relies heavily on the member secretary. This is a role that was specifically expanded and clarified in the 2023 amendment. The member secretary is, for all intents and purposes, the operational anchor. Their specific duties include convening the meetings, meticulously maintaining the records of all the proceedings, acting as the absolute guardian and safe custodian of all authority papers, and making sure that all directions and orders are officially issued under their seal.
Which brings us to Part 4, the rules for commercial access.
So, moving from the structure to the actual physiology of the system, what really happens when someone wants to access a biological resource, let's say a specific plant extract or some genetic material for commercial use? Let's completely demystify the protocol from the new rules. Individuals or companies seeking approval don't just, mail in a letter anymore. They've got to apply through the official IT web portal, using Form 2 for commercial utilization or Form 9 if they want to commercialize an intellectual property right. Step 2, paying a specified fee digitally straight into the National Biodiversity Fund. Then, the authority doesn't just make a decision in a vacuum. They actually have to consult with those local biodiversity management committees to secure prior informed consent. Finally, if approved, the applicant must sign an access contract, a mutually agreed terms agreement within a strict time frame. Usually, that's 60 to 90 days after the draft is communicated, otherwise the application is deemed closed.
Next up, Part 5, Fair Benefit Sharing, or ABS.
Okay, so once access is granted, we hit the scale that balances commercial innovation right alongside community rights. It is genuinely fascinating how the financial fees are beautifully tiered based on a company's annual turnover. The 2024 regulations laid this out crystal clear. If a company's annual turnover is up to 5 crore rupees, their benefit sharing fee is actually nil. Nothing. But as the company grows, the obligation scales right up with them. From 5 to 50 crore is 0.2% of the annual gross ex-factory sales price, and this scales all the way up to 0.6% for the massive entities pulling in above 250 crore. This structured approach ensures that when big businesses profit from biological resources, the local communities who actually preserve those resources get a fair cut of the financial pie.
All right, so we've seen how commercial entities gain access, how they apply, and how they pay their dues. But looking at all of this naturally begs a massive question. What happens when a biological resource is simply too precious or maybe too vulnerable to share?
That leads us to Part 6, Restricting Access.
This is where we see the ultimate defense mechanisms within the ecosystem of the Act, directly tied to conservation powers under Sections 36, 37, and 38. See, the authority isn't just a rubber stamp. It acts as a very real, very powerful shield. According to the rules, the authority can completely restrict or prohibit access on several specific grounds. If an application targets threatened or endemic species, like red sanders or sandalwood, for example, if harvesting the resource would negatively impact the sociocultural livelihoods of local people, if it poses an environmental impact that's just too hard to mitigate, if it creates dangerous genetic erosion in heritage sites, or simply if the access goes against national interest and international agreements. In any of these cases, the legal framework steps in to deliver a hard, non-negotiable no.
We've explored the rules, the institutional tiers, and the really delicate balance between commercial utilization and conservation. But as you think about this framework, protecting nature while advancing science, consider this final point. The 2024 rules explicitly had to add language regarding digital sequence information alongside physical biological resources, as biotechnology allows us to sequence genetic data and literally beam it across the globe in seconds without ever moving a physical plant or animal. Can our physical, border-based rulebooks truly keep up with the future of global biocommerce? It's a massive, massive challenge for the next generation of biodiversity law, and definitely something to chew on. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the systems that shape our world.